very, very pleased to introduce our special guest this evening to conduct our post-screening Q&A. Lisa Schwartzbaum is one of America's greatest film critics. She's now with Entertainment Weekly, which is very, very powerful in the world of film. So please welcome Lisa Schwartzbaum.
Power.
Lisa can crush me.
It's great to talk to you. It's great to talk to you after this. One of the things that strikes me immediately is that you have made this documentary like a collage. And it seems that the first documentary you made also, How to Draw a Bunny, is pieced together with collage bits. There's interview, there's performance, there's footage. Can you tell me how you assemble this to make it come together?
No, I can't do it.
Okay. If he can't do that, then...
It's,
This is gonna be great.
I think what interests me is the kind of fragmentary, episodic story, and not sort of the well-constructed three-act structure. It was funny because the first film I did was a film called How to Draw a Bunny about a collage artist named Ray Johnson. And I knew going into it I wanted to have the film, the actual form of the movie evoke collage, so that everything I'm doing as a filmmaker is pointing to my subject. And one of the things that helped me to do that was reading Brecht's ideas about theater. And Brecht's idea about montage was not combining things into a seamless whole, but presenting what he called this kind of separation of the elements, so that everything would retain its actual identity. This is sounding overly theoretical, but it's just like a collage. When you look at a collage, it's bits of newspaper and a painting and a photograph, and each single piece still is that thing, and then somehow it all combines to form a larger composition.
So when you go into this, you say, okay, I want to make a film about Brecht. Just like before you said, I want to make a film about Ray Johnson. You start with that. You start with the name, the subject. Then you don't know where that's going to take you. You don't know where the production of Mother Courage is going to go, or what Meryl Streep is going to say, or what you're going to find. So how do you advance it from there?
Well, for me, making a documentary is like you spend 1 year digging yourself into a hole, and then you spend another year clawing your way out.
Did you ever feel like you couldn't make this?
No. I sometimes felt like I shouldn't make it.
Why is that?
Just because it was so painful. It's just the loneliness.
Oh, it's so sad.
Film editor. No, but going into a project, I usually have a kind of shape in mind, sort of the shape of the structure. So with How to Draw a Bunny, it was a circle. It was sort of like, it would start with a man's death, and then proceed into an investigation of his life that would then end with his death. And so you're at the same point when you realize how far you've traveled in returning to that same point. For this film, I knew I wanted to approach Brecht through his work. So I wanted to find a bunch of interesting people putting on a show. And I wanted to make a documentary about some people today dealing with Brecht's work, and why are they, and all the questions that raises. And then I wanted to simultaneously tell the story of where that play came from and why that play came to be. And then I wanted to, so the shape that I had in mind was, I have this one narrative strand and this other one, and then they're sort of going to intertwine like a DNA helix.
And you also have the 5-act structure. You have this set up so that approaching Brecht and the ideas of him in 5 different ways of looking.
Right, so that came a little bit later, dividing it into these chapters. So, and that was a little bit more problem, you know, should I start with the biographical material of Brecht? That was one of the I don't know, sort of more unconventional things that I withheld most of that Brecht biography section until later in the film. But because I felt like the audience would be ready for it, rather than give them an A&E biography about, you know, Bertolt Brecht and, you know.
Again, though, if you have the opportunity of having Meryl Streep and Tony Kushner and Kevin Kline, then that obviously is a draw of a different sort. If you took a different group of people putting on a production of Brecht, it might go otherwise.
That's true, but there's still, I didn't want to treat them like stars. I wanted to, I mean, there's one little moment early in the film when, you know, Meryl Streep looks up into the lights and it's this kind of Joseph von Sternberg, Marlene Dietrich lighting, and she just looks like a movie star. You can't, even if you didn't know anything about this woman, you would think, my God, is she a movie star or what? But I just wanted, I wanted to treat them as people who have a job and go to work every day to do their job, and that's how I approached the interview too. I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to ask questions like, what's it like being Meryl Streep? You know, what's it like being the greatest actress of our generation? But I asked a question that she probably doesn't get asked, which is, you know, what actually does an actor do? You know, because.
Well, her talking about process and talking about the plumbing of the building, I mean, that is not what you get in your usual A&E biography or even, you know, the actor's studio.
But I think she was interested in doing that as part of her, you know, allowing me in the room. You know, she doesn't strike me as the kind of person that you can talk into things. You know, some people say, like, how did you talk Meryl Streep into it? It's like, I didn't, I showed up, you know, and she wanted to do this, so I was just lucky.
And in terms of luck, was there anything that totally caught you off guard in the process or in watching them put this together, something completely unexpected that changed the nature of what you might be doing?
Well, yes and no. I mean, part of it, I didn't run into anything unexpected because I was pretty successful in not having expectations. You know, it's a typical John Walter answer. But it's true. I wanted to, you know, I had my little roadmap. First I'm going to shoot the rehearsals, and I wanted to get them at the table, and then I wanted to get them, you know, in their street clothes or blocking the scenes. Then I wanted to get them in the costumes, and then I wanted something as close to the final play, but you know, sort of it was really the last dress rehearsal is what we shot. It was the last thing we shot, and I didn't want any of the performance. It all had to be a rehearsal. So, but I wanted to stay open to all sorts of different possibilities. Because the thing about Brecht is that so much has been written about him, and so much of it is unsatisfying. And I didn't really start to understand the guy or his work, you know, until I read, you know, almost everything that he wrote and everything written about him, and then started to see the plays, and then started to realize that I had to ignore most of what had been said about him, and so much of what was written about him was written during the Cold War, so as part of this now, you know, mostly irrelevant Cold War discourse. And like any great artist, their work has to, you know, their posthumous legacy has to be able to survive outside of their time. And I think his work is relevant today. So I wanted to do a kind of fresh approach to him. And so along the way, there were, you know, Meryl Streep would be telling me a story, and then she would say, you know, a phrase like bones in the landscape, and then you could tell she was sort of looking out, and she was having one of those actor visions, you know, or a sense memory or something. And then the last thing she said in our interview was that story about going to this little town outside of Prague. So she just gave me this amazing image, which I wasn't expecting. So then when Adrian, my wife, who was the line producer and did so much of this movie with me, Adrian and I went to Berlin for a month and did a lot of research in the Brecht archive. But we got up one morning and took a train down to Prague, and then got ripped off by an unscrupulous Czech taxi driver.
Brechtian.
But then we ended up in this little medieval village.
It's commerce and capitalism.
Right. Anyway, so they we paid them. It's cheap, considering. I don't mean to disparage the Czech.
Of course, you also had the good fortune of having that amazing footage of the testimony of the HUAC. And I'm going to tell a story that when we were watching the film as you were watching it, and John had to run in to see, because there's a moment where you said, if the audience laughs at this point in the testimony, then John knows that the film is being received in the right way, that you're, and could you talk a little bit more about that part?
Yeah, that footage is amazing. I always refer to it as the hero footage, and because it's the longest extended piece of footage on Brecht that was undertaken in his lifetime. But when you first watch that footage, it seems terrible. It's like he's speaking in this halting way with this heavy accent, and it's very undramatic because he just answers the question no, and they sort of shrug and they don't know what to say next, and that's it. And in fact, that footage was taken by Fox Movietone. It was never used in a newsreel because it was a non-event. They say all the other people were like, I refuse, I will not answer this question, and I don't recognize your right to ask me the question. And Brecht is answering the question very slowly. So the thing is, you have to understand the guy, the circumstances, and you have to understand a lot about what's actually happening there.
And again, you had then piecing it together to have his daughter say he was such an actor.
And that's one of the things. That was a moment. If you read, there's maybe 4 or 5 Brecht biographies out there, and each one has very different interpretations of what was going on in that moment, because it's such a strange moment in world history with all those people, Richard Nixon up there, and Bertolt Brecht, and Ronald Reagan, and Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall sitting in the back. And it's such a weird moment. One of the things too was because that footage had never been used in an actual Fox Movietone, we went to Fox Movietone, and all they had was a VHS transfer that they had done in the 90s, and it looked really bad. And so Adrian mostly worked on this, but we spent months tracking down the original negative in the Library of Congress, and when we put it up, it was in perfect condition, because it had probably only been run once, and those Movietone cameramen really knew their stuff, so it was just, and you could see everyone behind Brecht is wearing sunglasses, because they had these blinding lights just blasting on the witness. So that was one of the problems with the badly transferred footage. It was exposed for the background, so Bertolt Brecht was this glowing white silhouette, denying that he was a member of the Communist Party. And we can't use this. I don't care what it costs. Well, John, I don't know if it's going to look any better than that. But we must try. We must try. Only you can help me.
This is how you do your work, like that, in tones like that.
It's equal parts grandeur and pleading.
Well, actually, I just to switch it a little to how you do your work and how you buy your sandwich. You were saying that you are about to go back and you work as an editor on other documentaries.
Yeah, before before this, I edited a film called My Kid Could Paint That.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always possible to get my films financed and have an endless supply of work making my own movies. So I love editing, and I edit my own work. And so mostly as a way of protecting this film, we were running out of money as we were finishing it. And so rather than try to squeeze more money out of this project, I took a job editing someone else's film, which was sort of grueling.
To switch your head from
Well,
one to the
it was
other.
like, yeah, we had about a month and a half of work to finish this film. But the editing was done on this. I wasn't editing two films at once. This film was edited. I started editing someone else, but it was mostly supervising the various technical aspects, the color correction and the mix and things like that.
I want to ask you one aesthetic question, and then I think I'm going to open this up to see if there are any questions that you have, and we can take it from there. But one thing that strikes me is the black and white that you use when you are doing your interviewing, which you also did use on your first film. You are the anti-Ken Burns in that regard. It's a completely different feeling and tone. And what goes into making that choice for you?
Why do you say it's anti-Ken Burns?
Because it's not lit with that kind of baseball was the great pastime. You know, I mean, it's.
I worked on baseball. I was one of the sound editors.
Oops.
I was a sound editor.
But tell me about making that choice, which I mean, it looks beautiful too. I mean, it's a gorgeous look, but it puts people in a very different feel to have them in black and white and very close in that gorgeous lighting. So talk about that.
I think that's the main reason I do it is I just like the way it looks. I like black and white, and it's. The other thing is when you do these interviews, they're often spread out over the course of the making of the film, and they're in different locations, and so it's a way of signaling to the audience that all these people are here in the same room. It's like getting your interviewees together. It's keeping them on the same visual plane, and it's also part of that